77度のニャラビでニャクニャクイニャニャクニャニャハンニャニャダイニャンニャクニャラベテニャガニャガメ。
I've been meaning to cover 2023's Baby Cat ever since I first saw the poster for the film doing the rounds in early 2024. But given how busy of a year that was, it's taken me a little bit of a while to get around to finally covering this one on the channel. Indeed, even a glance at the poster itself raises more questions than it answers. At first, I just assumed this was some kind of softly from cable style fetish film, and, well, I don't feel I'm completely incorrect with that assertion. But there is at least a little bit more going on than meets the eye. Indeed, in interviews, the director has referred to this as a love story at its core. And, well, technically I don't personally think he's wrong, but what you kinda need to understand with this film is that that's all it's playing with outside of softcore sex, regular partial nudity, and the same style jokes over and over and over again. If you ever wanted an answer to the question, what if Neil Breen but bad, then buckle up, because this is a trip. So usually at this point I'd give a blow-by-blow breakdown of the plot up to around half an hour from the end of the film, because, hey, I might as well just stream the movie if I'm going to tell you the ending. But even before I get into the analytical portion of the review, we've already hit a kind of snag, which is that the film has a chronic issue of just stalling and repeating scenes over and over again to pad the runtime. Oh, they aren't rerunning scenes like flashbacks or anything, they just shot similar type scenes over and over again and then stitched them together into a movie in an attempt to try and get it to feature length. Realistically, this film should have been a 30 to 40 minute short, and it would have been much more concentrated and probably enjoyable as an end product. As it stands, this is just shy of 90 minutes and feels in desperate need of a haircut. So the film follows Dana, a young woman who's a bit down on her luck. She recently lost her job and has just gone through an equally messy breakup that's left her in a bit of a despondent place. But she has been thrown a bit of a lifeline. A new job opportunity as an admin or scout for an oil company's popped up, which Dana's accepted, and she's been asked to relocate to LA and start as soon as possible. And, as luck would have it, one of the last apartments she's looked into seems to be a perfect fit. It's close to the office, there are low rent fees, and it's in a good location for utilities. The landlord seems great and the neighbours are seemingly quite good fun too. As you can guess, however, there is one small snag. And that snag arrives pretty promptly in the form of Laurie. A fully grown woman dressed head to thigh in kawaii cat lingerie and thigh to foot in black cybergoth boots. While they don't use the term in the film, Laurie is essentially into pet play. And for you sheltered souls out there, that means that Laurie essentially likes to pretend to be an animal for as long as she likes or wants, complete with seeking an owner who'll take care of her. It's similar to, but not quite the same as furry culture, as, to my understanding, furries will create personas and treat animals as if they were anthropomorphized people. Pet play is the inversion of that, taking a person and essentially reverting them into an animalistic state where there's a carer and caree dynamic sometimes. A lot of pet play kind of falls into a sub-dom type thing. It's a whole thing. How far does this pet play extend to? Well, it means that she sleeps on the ground or in a pet bed, has to be fed from the floor, she wiggles and shakes around like cats do, she wants fussings, and she rubs up against people, walls, doors, and can only communicate via meows and facial expressions. Is there a sexual element to this pet play? Well, first of all, that's a bit presumptuous, arsehole. But yes, there is. Dana at first thinks she's going crazy when Laurie appears in full costume, wrapping herself around her and her landlady's legs. She feels even crazier when the landlady doesn't really even acknowledge just how crazy the situation is. But when she offers Dana an additional discount on rent if she's willing to put up with Laurie's antics, it's enough to tip Dana into begrudgingly agreeing to take on the apartment. And from there, the nightmare begins. On moving in, she meets her new neighbour, Max Power, Simpsons reference, whose sole life vibe is go with the flow, love to love, and live to the max. And don't worry if you don't pick up on that, because that's basically all the dialogue they have across this whole movie's runtime. Dana asks Max about the semi-nude cat lady, and they basically just kind of shrug it off, because she doesn't really hurt anybody, and if she isn't hurting anyone, why upset the apple cart? A little phased, Dana tries to shake it off and heads off to her first day at her new job. And it doesn't really help matters, honestly. The office environment is overly clinical and stuffy, and at first it appears that Dana is the first one in. But then a boss comes in, and he's nuts. He starts rambling aimlessly in corporate jargon crossed with a football coach on everything from being the best company they can be, to seizing opportunity, to work ethic, all the while his deputy, or Dana's manager, is just kind of humouring him. It then finally lands with Dana. There are no other employees. Her boss is basically just insane and imagines that there's an office full of busy workers when it's, in fact, literally just Dana and the boss's handler. In fact, this is a point that's not really explored in the film, but it's not even really clarified if Dana's actually even working towards an end goal for the company, or if she's just been hired to help give the boss the illusion that he's managing a workplace. Kind of like when they set up a fake office for Fred Trump and just sent random actors in with stacks of fake documents for him to sign to give him the illusion that he was still working when he was in fact crippled with dementia. After a day like she's had, Dana heads out to just try and grab a nice burger and wind down for the day, but even that doesn't quite go to plan when she drops most of the contents down the front of her shirt. Approaching a breaking point, she's interrupted by scratching at the door. She opens up and finds Laurie there, who bursts into her apartment, wrecks up the place, and then leaves. Dana's lost for words. But that's quickly upended even further when someone knocks at the door, and it's a delivery guy with a few $100s worth of expensive gourmet ice cream. Dana says she didn't order it, and the delivery guy basically says, well, if you don't take it, I'm just going to leave it here to melt, so she takes it and has ice cream, I guess. The next day, in quick succession, Dana wakes up, goes to the gym where she's swapped out with stock footage and a body double for some reason. The director appears as a naked gym man, which is really not helping the "this is a fetish film" accusations. She heads back to the apartment where Laurie's waiting for her, so Dana decides to give her some milk, which she gleefully licks up, before snuggling up to Dana for fussings. Dana slowly ends up confiding in Laurie, having a bit of a heart-to-heart about the situation, and slowly but surely, Dana begins to catch feels for the security that Laurie is bringing. To the point that, after sharing, Dana lets Laurie out of the apartment and then she furiously begins masturbating over Laurie, which, even she, in character, is a bit like, what the fuck about? That night, Dana has a sex dream in which Laurie appears in the apartment and the pair get hot and heavy. Only, the next morning, Dana wakes up and Laurie is in her bed and it wasn't a dream. She gets up and makes the pair breakfast, but things turn a bit awkward when Laurie still won't talk or do anything other than mew. So Dana kicks her out of the apartment, but then quickly realises that life's kind of dull and depressing without her. That, and she wants more hot lesbian cat sex. That's literally the tone the film's going with on this one. I can't really infer it any other way, honestly. Dana summons Laurie back, apologises profusely for kicking her out, and begins to vent again about the world, her situation, and her frustrations with this arrangement. But Laurie pops titty, so they get back to having hot sticky lesbian catgirl sex again. They then show Dana's body double exercising again before establishing that a few days have passed and that Dana and Laurie are now officially a thing. But then a few more days go by and Dana's becoming increasingly worried because Laurie hasn't come back to the apartment complex for a good while. After another heart-to-heart with the landlady and Max at the laundrette, however, Laurie does come back. Dana tries to give her some soup, it doesn't work, but hey, they're together, and that's what counts. Oh, and Max flat out asks Dana if she's fucking the cat. Dana tells them she is, and then acknowledges she's basically queer now. And what follows for most of the rest of the film from this point is a cycle of Dana fucking Laurie, getting a bit emotional at her own life and frustrated that Laurie won't or can't talk to her properly, more sex, more venting, more sex, this goes on for a while. And the only significant event occurs midway into the second act when Dana's mum announces that she's in town and wants to visit. But Dana's apartment is full of skimpy cat lingerie and cat toys. Oh, and she has a fully grown-ass woman licking her own butthole cello style on the rug every night. So, mild panic, I guess? Until she realises that she can just take her mum to a restaurant, which she does, only to bump into Laurie, who is fully dressed, speaking goddamn English, and spends the rest of the meal with Dana and her mother being incredibly respectful. This essentially puts Dana in a fugue state, especially when she gets home to find Laurie back in the cat costume meowing again. She blows up at Laurie, but Laurie pops titty, and so the cycle continues. It's at this point that I should probably introduce the B-plot for this film, because, believe it or not, there is a B-plot to this film. It's a B-plot that has almost no crossover with the A-plot of this picture until the final 15 minutes or so, which puts it firmly in Godfrey Ho territory in my eyes. But the film initially opens with a scene involving 3 to 4 drug dealers walking into a warehouse that's floor to ceiling full of drugs that we don't see, but it's enough to make all the drug dealers fully lost for words, barring, "Look at all these drugs!" They then promptly get dispatched by an unseen force. The cops arrest them and seize over $60,000 in illicit materials, and we're then introduced to Mr. Chance, who, I believe, though I don't think they clarify, is a skeezy lawyer type working for an underground Eastern European kingpin who's trying to take over the flow of the city's drug supplies. Through Mr. Chance, our kingpin recruits pushers and is working on developing a new addictive drug called Nuke, RoboCop 2 reference, that could make him one of the richest men in LA. There's just one problem. Every time the pushers start to mobilise, they're quickly taken down by something. There's no footage of this person, no evidence they were ever even there, but the Kingpin knows something's up, and he believes it's the return of a super soldier codenamed Bear, who was created by the government to try and end the war on drugs once and for all. As such, they mobilise to try and take out Bear, but things don't quite go to plan. They pop in and out of the plot up until the final 20 minutes or so, when they narrow down the location of Agent Bear to a single apartment complex, and it's here in the final act that we basically end up with the plot of the movie. As Dana basically tells Laurie, unless she starts opening up to her, that they can't be together, which prompts Laurie to reveal that she is in fact Agent Bear, a genetically modified super soldier sent to end the war on drugs. She doesn't say that, she gets a telegram guy to deliver that news. And the criminals accidentally kidnap Dana, incorrectly believing that she is Agent Bear. It prompts Laurie into immediate action to try and save her partner, end the war on drugs, and deliver world peace between the furries and the pet play community. In a gripping finale for the ages, will Laurie save Dana? Will Max get to maximum power? And apparently this film has bear cocaine in it. Bear cocaine. I give up. It's Baby Cat. If you want to see this, go watch Baby Cat. It's hard for me to really convey my feelings around this film because I'm really struggling to decide just how sincere the film is about what it's trying to show. Basically, in my opinion, there are two sides of the fence this film could potentially sit in. It's either A, a sincere attempt at a quirky anime-style comedy romance ecchi piece made by someone who has difficulty processing emotional and social interactions that, when translated into a live-action environment, has instead just become a bit weird and uncomfortable, or B, this really is just a producer's style excuse to realise someone's pet play fetish on film, disguised as a pro-LGBTQIA+ piece to try and deflect from the fact that whoever wanted this film to exist really just wanted to see gothy alt women writhe around in kawaii lingerie and get naked for 90 minutes. There's honestly as much evidence present for scenario A as there is for scenario B, and it can't also be overlooked that the answer could lie somewhere in the middle. But in trying to get to the nub of the issue, I don't feel like I've come any closer to really understanding exactly the intentions of the film. For every positive thing I've found, such as a sincere attempt at trying to get LGBTQIA+ inclusion put into the film, there's a negative, such as an interview with the director where he essentially says that the only reason the actresses aren't nude in his bikini movie is because the censors throw a hissy fit on nudity, but if you put women in small bikinis, they don't bat an eyelid.
Bikinis are a common method in films. In film is, we can show nudity, but we're going to imply the hell out of it. And that was a traditional method of doing that. To a certain extent, it's kind of silly. I just kind of like the silliness.
Or the inescapable fact that the director cameos as a nude gym goer in two scenes in this film when he didn't need to be nude. And it didn't need to be him. I personally am always someone who tries to assume good intent as a primary motivator when looking at projects like this, but even I'm struggling here a bit. To kick things off, the script's a bit of a mess, and a bit of a lesson on why medium matters. See, had this been a cartoon or anime, and had this been about 30 to 40 minutes shorter, I could have seen this making a somewhat quirky OVA. On paper, it reads like an ecchi shoujo anime plot. but it's the fact that this has been rendered in live action where the wheels really start to come off this thing for me. There are certain things that can be written for an animated medium that'll just kind of work, which, when translated into live action, just don't. And while I think Woman starts a relationship with a lady in lingerie who may or may not think she's actually a cat could make a quirky little short film in live action, unless you're pulling some Stephen Moffat-level plot twists out of the ether, I don't think that as a plot point can sustain itself to feature runtime. And that really is where the film starts to snowball, really. It's a 20 to 30 minute idea at most, pulled out to a feature runtime, and once the initial shock of Laurie's reveal is out of the way, the film doesn't really know what to do with her, so it just kind of idles in a loop of Dana questioning her relationship with Laurie, having sex with Laurie, and having heart-to-hearts with the extended cast around how Laurie is a complex being that Dana wishes she could figure out. The one or two plot twists this film does offer, such as Laurie's sudden appearance at Dana's dinner with her mum where she starts acting completely human and normal, or the reveal in the third act that Laurie's in fact a super soldier, are twists that just don't feel earned in this universe. The film does the absolute barest minimum to set those twists up and doesn't really explore them beyond a "well, that just happened" mentality. Laurie turning up acting completely human should have been a complex plot divergence and should have been a major revelation. It should have led to actual plot, actual discussions around why Laurie wants to be a cat most of the time. But not only do they cut away from Laurie joining the gang for lunch and acting normally throughout, but the very next scene she's back to acting like a cat and speaking via telegrams through a delivery guy. They don't address it beyond Dana getting angry at her for not revealing that information sooner. They had the perfect opportunity to build in some character complexity and development, and they just didn't do it, in favour of continuing to run the same jokes deeper and deeper into the ground. I figured out pretty early on that Laurie was the person dispatching the drug pushes in the city, and I kind of assumed that she was pretending to be a cat at the complex as a way of going into hiding. After all, the film establishes that only one person working for the bad guys currently knows what Agent Bear looks like, and a key plot point in the third act is them kidnapping Dana thinking she's Agent Bear by mistake. I thought it could have been a quite neat little way to tie the A and B plots together a bit more to have it be revealed that the cat persona was an alias, and that the hardened thugs would have never believed somebody called Agent Bear was hiding in an apartment complex pretending to be a lingerie-clad cat girl. But no, it never comes up. And the second Dana's kidnapped, Laurie just goes straight into being a human again and starts kicking arse and taking names. On revealing that Laurie had undergone genetic and medical experimentation to turn her into a super soldier, I'd have figured, oh, well maybe the cat persona's like an alter ego. When she's deactivated, she's in cat mode, and when she's activated, she's a human codenamed Agent Bear. But again, no, it turns out she just likes pretending to be a cat full-time on a downtime for no significant reason. But of these moments were instances where the script really could have latched on to something good, fleshed it out and made these characters feel a bit more developed than just surface level interpretations. But they just never go for it, to the point that even the characters start acknowledging potential huge plot twists, only to dismiss them immediately after the words have even left their mouths. I think it's trying to play for comedy in that regard, but it actually just comes across as frustrating because it feels like the filmmaker's trying to flex when he hasn't really proven he has the pedigree to flex. The best example I can think of is a scene just after Laurie leaves Dana for the second time, where Dana and a landlady are just casually chatting, and Dana says something to the effect of, knowing how weird things have been, Laurie probably owns this entire apartment complex. To which her landlady says, oh, well, she does. And Dana says, oh, of course she does. Which to me felt like the filmmaker was basically saying, I am so full of good ideas I can afford to toss out plot points without developing them at all, because we have enough going on as it is. Which is great, if there actually was multiple plots being developed up to that point. Doing that kind of stuff when you've only been hammering the same two plot points repeatedly for the better part of an hour up to that point, cycling the same tropes over and over again, doesn't make me go, wow, this guy's firing on all cylinders. It makes me go, wow, this guy really needs to stop and take a moment to understand that you can have a side plot to your A and B plots that aren't just passing conversations, and that your core plots should either be complementing or contrasting each other, but they shouldn't feel like two different movies stapled together. Which is what this film feels like. It feels in places like it has an unfounded confidence in its abilities. And while I'll be one of the first to say that filmmakers should be bold in their visions and in trying to realise a project, there's a difference between quiet confidence and overt confidence, and this came across to me as overtly confident in itself with nothing to back it up. Adding to this, we have severe pacing issues, with the first act getting the big shock twist of Laurie out of the way in the first 10 minutes. The film then essentially just idles in a will they won't they with softcore scenes for the better part of 50 minutes, while the drug plot line also kind of idles too, as we flip-flop between scenes of drug dealers getting taken down off screen, news reports of drug operations being blown up or shut down, or monologues with Quilling, the kingpin, that feel like puff pieces aimed at setting the mood, but not really saying anything of importance. The final 20 minutes then suddenly shift up into a straight action thriller, but again, because Laurie's actual reasoning behind her actions are so vague and underdeveloped, her suddenly turning into, well, I won't go as far as saying a badass, but she goes from meowing to talking, doesn't really feel earned. It feels, if anything, like the character of Laurie is just a bit of an arsehole. Someone who's willing to psychologically hurt a potential love interest to the point that she effectively develops Stockholm Syndrome, but if it suits her needs, she'll suddenly just start behaving. It leads to a final confrontation that I didn't personally feel the film had earned, that meanders for longer than it should and ended underwhelmingly, followed by a final scene that tries to tie the last hour and 20 of utter confusion up into some kind of happy ending, that requires the audience to assume every character in this thing has some degree of cognitive dissonance. The transition into each of the acts were sloppy, with the first to second act transition being basically non-existent, as by the time the first act's underway, it's already locked into idling between sex scenes, heart-to-hearts, office scenes and workout footage, and the second to third act transition feels harsh and rushed into. There's no rev up, it just suddenly happens with almost no framework put in place to support it. The characters themselves are incredibly one-note, to the point that it actually begins to hurt the film as a result. Dana probably gets the most complexity, but she really just has 3 modes: confused, horny, and upset or conflicted. Most of her scenes just have her either trying to explain how weird having a cat girlfriend is, wanting to fuck her cat girlfriend, or being confused about whatever's happening in front of her. And it's fine to do those things in moderation, but that's literally all her character brings to the table. Laurie's character is particularly upsetting because the film establishes that she is cognitively human when in cat mode. And that could have opened up opportunities for Laurie to do human stuff when in cat mode as a cover, because everyone in the film knows that Laurie is a cat. So if Laurie, I don't know, beat up a local sleazeball or prevented a fire from breaking out or something, she'd be able to do it knowing no one would believe she did it because she's a cat. They never play on that, not even once. The best we get is the delivery guy delivering stuff on her behalf, and even that plays on the idea that she has an on and off mode, which essentially means for a good 30 to 40 minutes where she's on screen, all we see is her pulling facial expressions and meowing, when she's arguably one of the more interesting characters to explore in the film. The supporting cast get even less. Max and the landlady are just portrayed as happy clappy chappies for most of the runtime, radiating positivity and nothing else for the whole damn thing. Balloons with smiley faces drawn on them. While the rest of the cast are just played as eccentric weirdos, again, with no other significant qualities other than, hey, look how weird these guys and gals are. I could look the other way a bit if maybe the dialogue had been a bit tighter, if they'd maybe given some more poignant moments, or given the dialogue something beyond just telling the audience exactly how the characters feel or what the situation is. But it doesn't. It just spoon feeds us the entire way, with the insult to injury being that the director's on record as saying that he doesn't believe performances improve much past a first take.
Sometimes when you're shooting 3 or 4 minutes a day, it can feel a little slow to a certain extent. The pacing just doesn't work, especially with comedy. Shooting one comedy scene a day is usually death by the end. Generally speaking, actors don't improve that much with a second take. There are some, I mean, we took multiple takes of a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily improve that much.
Meaning there are often flubs in line deliveries, or the lines themselves aren't written coherently. They don't scan. They don't read in correct English. And I know that no one speaks fluent, coherent English 99% of the time, but that should come as a naturalistic part of the line delivery, not as the actual written line attempting to be delivered by the cast. All of this is mired in by the tone of the production, which flicks wildly between wanting to be a colourful, ditzy comedy, but not quite getting there, wanting to look like a cool, slick action film in places, but not quite getting there, and wanting to be a genuinely emotional love story, but not quite getting there. I wouldn't say those elements were incompatible with each other, but introducing the partial nudity, softcore scenes, and LGBTQIA+ themes muddies the waters on it, making it really hard to fully understand whether I'm supposed to be laughing with the film and going along with it on a thematic level, or laughing at the film as a work of so bad it's good cinema. It's messy. The script was written and directed by Scott Hillman. He has 8 writing and directing credits, he's directed everything he's written, and he edits most of the stuff he writes and directs too. Highlights include Bikini Hackers, The Magical Christmas Tree, and Blue Belt. But it seems a not insignificant chunk of his films, including the one he currently has in post-production, involve either bikini-clad women, softcore sex, or people transforming or becoming animals. On the broader scene, he's really more of a gaffer and cam op, with 56 credits in the field mainly for Cinema Epoch Productions, who, well, that's a well to pull from for another day. On the direction front, and stay with me, but I think this may be Scott's strongest element here. From what I can gather, he largely worked alone or with skeleton crews throughout this, and while I personally can't say I think the film looks good, he does seem to know how to communicate what he wants on set to the crew. Or, at the very least, the cast and crew are receptive to what he wants. It can't be denied that this is a distinct vision. It's hard to place because I don't know how much of this production was actively crewed, how many people were ultimately involved, and how long they worked on this for. If Scott's other films are to be believed, I'd be very surprised if he had more than 3 crewmen on set at a time for this, not including the cast, but there's lighting. Scott largely worked the camera, so he knew what he wanted to capture, I guess. It's his vision. And he says he's happy with it, so I can't really complain. The cast direction is pretty solid too in this. I mean, the majority is Scott just asking Fawn Winters to meow and shake her arse at the camera, but she does that very well. Nah, Scott's worked quite well with the cast here to put across the kind of energy and enthusiasm the film really needed, and while I won't say they're perfect, they at least feel focused on the task at hand and bring the kind of presence and delivery here that the film really needed. However, once again, things do fall apart on a Cine level. For multiple reasons. Where do I even really begin? So, they use AI for the opening titles. If Scott owns a tripod, he never levels it, as 80% of the shots in this thing aren't leveled, and I don't think he white balances either because some of the shots are blown out, and others are painfully underlit to the point that you can't see what's happening on screen. Most shots wobble or have shake to some degree, shots don't often frame the cast members correctly or will crop random bits of them out, there are moments that are handheld that feel like the camera's being flung about, there are moments that feel very much like covert filming, so I'm not entirely sure if they were done with a permit or not, but they don't look great. Shots of the female cast's assets are lingered on at times for an uncomfortable period of time. Broader still, some shots will run on and on and on forever without appropriate levels of coverage or B-roll. A lot of scenes are one take, maybe 2, and then done, meaning flubs, technical issues, and other problems are persistent throughout the film.
You said do a storyboard. I did not do a storyboard. I honestly don't necessarily like storyboarding myself, especially when you're dealing with this budget, because whenever you get there, it's not going to be the same thing. It's just not going to work out that way. So why bother, so to speak?
The film's heavily reliant on green screen work for a significant chunk of the runtime, but Scott rarely ever lights the screens properly, meaning it regularly phases in and out of the shots, reflections often cast weird halos onto the backdrops, elements from the overlaid images will sometimes spill into the background image, tinting colours to extreme degrees. A regular example being Dana's red apartment door turns purple because of poor green screen work. Sometimes the footage green screened isn't stabilised or locked off on a tripod, meaning you can have a scene where a guy is delivering something stood still in the doorway, while behind him the exterior location footage flails around wildly. Keying is also an issue, with characters at multiple points just randomly floating around the inserted background because the motion tracking keys have failed. There are multiple points on TV screens where text that's been keyed in awkwardly tries to match the pace of a pull-out shot and ends up going squiffy. There are multiple points where things randomly fall out of the safety zones of the shot and wind up half cropped in, half cropped out of the picture. The titles and credits aren't properly formatted either, meaning on at least 2 occasions I saw a copyright notice end up running right off the screen and never coming back. I'm not saying there aren't good shots in this film, I'm just saying that the vast majority of the shots I did see were incredibly, uniquely low quality or of poor construction. Only compounded even further by an equally poor edit that's littered with errors ranging from small to seriously problematic. Highlights there include sequences cutting way too late or way too early, lead-in rushes being present in the final edit, effects layerings popping in and out of sequences before they're supposed to happen or way after they've already happened, colour grade layers accidentally running into the next scenes repeatedly, meaning that grades from the previous scene end up bleeding into the next scene, spelling mistakes in the titles and credits, poor implementation of ADR work that makes dimensions and time look like Fargo. It's an edit that lacks focus, consideration, or professional attention. It feels like it was cut while the editor was only half paying attention to it, which is amazing when you consider that Scott was the editor for this. It's his own movie. It's his baby. I can't tell if these mistakes were intentional to try and cash in on the so bad it's good crowd, or if he genuinely just struggles with editing as a practice. But it seriously hobbled this film in my opinion. The pacing was already knackered before this edit, and this really doesn't help it. I've said it multiple times, but the absolute need of studios to get at minimum an 80-minute runtime to call it feature length has hobbled so many productions, and this film is unfortunately a textbook instance of that in action. Performance-wise, we have this film's strongest element. The film may not look like much, but the cast are especially decent given the source material they're working with. Fawn Winters as Laurie gives a confident and clear delivery of her line work, and given the role is predominantly physical, I feel she really nails the mannerisms of a cat. I think she's the best performer in this, and for low-budget filmmaking, I think she's actually pretty bloody superb as a physical actress, and her deliveries are solid too. That's not to downplay Natalie Cotter, who also has clear and confident ranges in terms of line delivery. And while her physical presence is maybe a little more stilted than Fawn's, she's still perfectly amicable and could give a solid performance for a film that I imagine most actors would treat as a paycheck gig and nothing more. The supporting cast are pretty solid too. Sox Whitmore as Max brings a charismatic and charming energy to proceedings. Jay Hewlett is insane as Dana's boss, bringing a manic energy that really helps perk the film up. Christopher Sandberg is the underrated gem here as the delivery driver, who becomes increasingly obtuse and bizarre as the runtime goes on. He decides to play the role dry, and I think that really pays off, giving the film some of its funnier moments. And Johnny Mask as Mr. Chance is a wonderfully strange performance that reminded me a bit of Winter Beast in all the best ways. If you see this film for nothing else, the performances are probably one of them. And finally, the soundtrack. It's all stock tracks, and from Scott's own AMA, he literally just searched the word cat royalty-free music and pulled whatever he could find. It's fine. Maybe a little generic, but it works for what the film's trying to do. I personally think it could have maybe done with being better utilised across the runtime, and maybe a bit more actiony music could have been used in the final act, which really probably would have helped it get over the line. It's not the worst I've seen, but it could have been better. What I did have problems with, however, is the ADR work, which doesn't match the on-set audio in the slightest. And for Quilling, the Kingpin, they decided to completely replace the original actor's attempt at a funny foreign accent, and it literally does not match the original actor's mouth movements at all. The on-set audios are fine enough, but that ADR work, oh boy. Baby Cat was officially released online in 2023, and from what I can see, I don't think there's been a physical release currently. But when I search for this film, I do get a link to DVD Planet, which seems to be the only place claiming to stock a DVD copy of this film. And looking through the site, it looks like it has a lot of streaming-only movies that it's offering on disc, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bootleg. Scott has said that a 4K physical release of this is in active discussions, and the film was edited in 4K, so maybe someday, I guess. In the meantime, the film is available on Tubi and on Amazon Prime Video. It's now been over 24 hours since I watched Baby Cat for the first time, and it's basically been all I've thought about for at least 16 hours of that time. A man's gotta sleep. It's kind of haunting me, because I feel like somewhere in the guts of this film is something that could be genuinely engaging. I've said it multiple times, but a 20 to 30 minute short version of this, with more care and attention put into it, could have the potential to actually be pretty good. But somewhere along the way, the vision for this film got bent out of shape, and it just seems to have spiralled from there. If you enjoy weird cinema and have a strong constitution for being patient, I think you may feel like me and find moments of this film quite enjoyable. But if you're any other way, I'd avoid this one like the plague.